Greetings. Welcome to our video presentation today. We're looking at Matthew 24, the three crucial questions. This video is brought to you by Solid Word Ministries. There's our email, and please feel free to stop the video to read the scriptures and ponder these thoughts, and of course pray for God's intervention. And let's move along. So Matthew 24, we're going to look at the three crucial questions. First, the verses that introduce them. And it's in Matthew 24, 2 and 3. But he answered them, you see, all these do you not truly say unto you, there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. And as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? All right. First, the question. Take these in order. When will these things be, or when will these things happen? What things? Well, the things that Jesus previously said. We're going to go in reverse here from Matthew 24 to Matthew 21, and it's believed that he told the disciples these things all the same day, and it would have been the Tuesday after Palm Sunday, just a few days before his crucifixion. All right, so first we read where he predicted the destruction of the temple. In the previous chapter, he declared their house or the temple would be desolate. He also said there that on their generation would come all the righteous blood shed on the earth. Please feel free to stop and read these verses. I'm just mentioning the crux of them. All right, going one more chapter previous into Matthew 22, 6 and 7, in the king's marriage for his son parable. Those that invited them to the wedding feast were killed, and the angry king sent his armies and destroyed those murderers and burned up their city. And this is referring to, as scholars agree, referring to the destruction of first century Jerusalem by the Roman armies, which were God's instrument of judgment. These are the things that Jesus was speaking about, they were asking about. All right, going back now, top right there, those that were servants in the vineyard in this parable in Matthew 21 were killed by the tenants, and the owner of the vineyard comes to destroy them and lease the vineyard to other tenants. Don't take my word for these things. Feel free to stop and read these passages. All of these things now that they asked him about, which was this first question here, this first crucial question, all right, all that they asked him about were judgments that Jesus declared in the temple and the people of his day. No predictions were made about anyone else, nor anyone in the distant future. Matthew 21, he predicts judgment on the nation. Matthew 22, judgment on the city. Matthew 23, judgment on the leaders. Matthew 24, judgment on the temple. These are the things that they were asking him about. Moving along. Now, second, their next question, what will be the sign of your coming? Very crucial question. All right? So first, we must try to put ourselves in the disciples' shoes as first century Jews, knowing only the Old Testament. What would their concept be of Jesus coming or presence, as this Greek word is also translated as in 2 Corinthians 10:10 and Philippians 2:12. You can look those up. That's where the same Greek word that's translated coming in Matthew 24 is translated as presence in these passages. Now, bottom left, let's look at the definition for the word coming here from the Strong's Greek lexicon. From the present participle, comes from G3918, a being near, that is, advent, often return, or specifically of Christ to punish Jerusalem, or finally the wicked, by implication, physical aspect, coming, presence. And I've added emphasis because this connects exactly with what Jesus was talking about. Okay, next here, we need to grasp what the disciples thought about Jesus and his statements about himself and his mission. The disciples at that point didn't understand Jesus going to heaven. Therefore, they were oblivious to anything about his future second coming, as the following will confirm. All right? Jesus spoke of his crucifixion and resurrection, and they understood none of these things, as I'm going to read this passage in Luke 18. And taking the 12, he said to them, "See, we are going to Jerusalem, and everything that is written about the Son of Man by the prophets will be accomplished. For he will be delivered over to the Gentiles, and will be mocked and shamefully treated and spit upon. And after flogging him, they will kill him on the third day, and on the third day he will rise." But they understood none of these things. This saying was hidden from them, and they did not grasp what he said. Moving along. Okay, we're talking about their next question continued. What will be the sign of your coming? They asked him. All right. Now, Peter and John, or I should say another disciple, it's possibly John, because this is in John's gospel. At the tomb, they didn't know the scripture about Jesus rising from the dead. And I'm going to read about this in John 20. All right. And at that, Peter and the other disciple went out heading for the tomb. The two were running together, but the other disciple, this is possibly John here, outran Peter and got to the tomb first. Stooping down, he saw the linen cloths lying there, but he did not go in. Then following him, Simon Peter also came. He entered the tomb and saw the linen clothes lying there. The wrapping that had been on his head was not lined with the linen cloths, but was folded up in a separate place by itself. The other disciple who had reached the tomb first then also went in and saw and believed, for they did not yet understand the scripture, that he must rise from the dead. Then the disciples returned to the place where they were staying. So the other disciples saw and believed, but at that point they still didn't understand what the scripture said about this. Right? All right? So at the end of 40 days before Jesus ascended, he had been resurrected with them 40 days. The 11 went to a mountain Jesus directed them to, and they saw him, but some still had doubts. Here I'm going to read to Matthew 28, 16 and 17. It says, "Now the 11 disciples went to Galilee to the mountain which Jesus had directed them. And when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted." So here, the end of 40 days, some still doubted. All right? Now, in regards to his resurrection, it looks as if they all doubted it at first. Mark 16. "She went and told those who had been with him, as they mourned and wept. But when they heard that he was alive and had been seen by her, they would not believe it." It wasn't just Thomas that doubted. They all doubted. This is what I'm seeing here. Moving along. In Acts 1:6, right before he ascended, they were still thinking in terms of Jesus staying on the earth and restoring the kingdom to Israel, because this is what they asked him about. All right? So in review here, we know from Scripture the apostles didn't understand Jesus' crucifixion before it happened. They doubted the resurrection after it happened. 40 days after Jesus' resurrection, they were still thinking in terms of him restoring a kingdom to Israel at his ascension. Knowing all this, there's no possible way they were asking Jesus about his second coming in our future in Matthew 24. No possible way. This is crucial. Moving along. With this in mind, then, what did they mean with the question to Jesus? What will be the sign of your coming? Well, let's look at this parallel passage in Luke 21:7. Each question has a parallel in Mark 13 and Luke 21. The parallel question to what will be the sign of your coming in Luke is, "Teacher, when will these things be? What will be the sign when these things are about to take place?" All right? We must not lose sight of the events Jesus predicted, all verified as transpiring in the first century, and the disciples' first question about when they would happen. The questions and the whole discussion was all connected to this and nothing else. All right? The fact that they were totally unaware of Jesus' future second coming, therefore they were most likely asking about either Jesus coming in judgment in a metaphoric way as happened in the Old Testament. All right, I'm going to read in Isaiah 19, 1 and 2. It says, an oracle concerning Egypt, behold, the Lord is riding on a swift cloud and comes to Egypt. And the idols of Egypt tremble at his presence, and the heart of the Egyptians will melt with them. And I will stir up Egyptian against Egyptians, and they will fight each against another, and each against his neighbor, city against city, kingdom against kingdom. This would be the disciples' understanding of a coming of the Lord, which they would have understood as a metaphor for judgment. You can read the passage here in Psalm 18 that goes into more detail about a metaphoric description of coming and judgment. All right? Or they could have been asking him about his coming, something along the lines of Jesus overthrowing the Romans and restoring the kingdom to Israel, as they asked him about in Acts 1:6 we talked about. Moving along. Now their third and final question of these three crucial questions that frame the context of Matthew 24, which is, when would be the end of the age? What age? Let's take a look. First, we know the first two questions were both about Jesus' prediction of first century events. And at that time, they were in the age that the temple was a huge part of for covenant activity. The temple being destroyed would be the end of that age for them. All right? Would they be asking about the end of an age that they weren't in yet? Does that make any sense? Or would they be asking about an age that had no connection to the temple Jesus has just told them was going to be destroyed? No possible way. All their questions were about the judgments Jesus told them were going to happen, which all happened in the first century. This last part is very crucial. Listen very carefully. Since they weren't asking Jesus about events in our future, Jesus' answer wasn't about events in our future. They were asking about past events that Jesus had predicted. And Jesus answered their questions about those past events in the rest of Matthew 24. Please pray about this. Look this over again. Contemplate this. Ask God about this. And may God bless you. Thank you for watching.